Kidzrock, what's up? Welcome to Kidzrock Online. My name is Jacob, and I am the Kidzrock pastor, and I'm happier than a dog that gets one of those little Kong toys that has the frozen peanut butter in it and they lick it for hours on end. Happier than that you are here with us today. We are starting a new series we're calling Brix. Yeah, simple. But we're going to be learning that our lives, our choices, our past, our gifts, everything about us makes up the bigger picture and the bigger masterpiece that is God's ultimate masterpiece, us. Ephesians 2:10 tells us that we are God's masterpieces, and that means we're His best work. So we're going to be learning all about that, but first, it's time for the weekly dose of nonsense. Welcome to the weekly dose of Welcome to the weekly dose of nonsense. I'm glad you made it. I was afraid you wouldn't. Since we're starting a new series called Brix that is based off the internationally recognized and amazing toy Lego, I've got a few Lego facts that you may not have known previously. The first fact is, did you know that Lego produces more tires than Goodyear, the actual tire company? Yes, Lego produces about 870,000 tires every single day. That's a lot of tires. Also, did you know that there are over 400 billion Lego pieces around the world at any given moment? And if you stacked every single one of those on top of one another, it would be almost 2.4 million miles tall. That's over 10 times the distance between the Earth and the Moon. Yeah, that's a lot of Lego bricks. So, Lego, it's some serious stuff. This has been the weekly dose of nonsense. I hope you learned a thing or two about your favorite Lego bricks. Yeah. Now is the part of the week where we stand up, or we loosen up, crack the neck a couple of times, do a couple of these guys, and a couple of those. And we're about to do one of our worship warm-ups, and then afterwards we're going to worship together to two of our songs. So wherever you're at, whether you're at our Coastal campus, Anner campus, Conway campus, at home, it doesn't matter. Stand up and let's get ready to party. Here we go.
would welcome me. I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
Now it's part of the week where we start our teaching. And this week, in the first week of Brix, we are going to learn that asking questions helps us grow. Yes. And I've heard some of your questions and they can be quite ridiculous. But whether your question is super silly or super serious, questions are what help us grow, not only in knowledge, but grows our faith. So I have a video for you guys about asking questions, and then we're going to watch a Bible story about a guy named Jacob who ended up having his name changed to Israel, and how he wrestled with God and asked a question to God, just like we can ask questions to God, and we can ask questions about God. So, sit tight and watch these two videos. Here we go. Hey guys! So, we are starting this new series called Brix, where we're learning that our lives and our choices that we make up the entire masterpiece that is humanity. See, God made every single one of us. Ephesians 2:10 says that we are His masterpiece, His handiwork. We are learning that just like Lego bricks or a puzzle, every single piece is important. If you have a 10,000 piece puzzle and are missing one piece, you can never complete the puzzle. Or if you have a 15,000 piece Death Star Lego superset and you're missing one piece, that amazing model will never be complete. And we are the very same. There are billions of people on this planet. Everyone's unique. And it may be overwhelming that there are billions and billions and billions of people, and you may feel insignificant or that your life doesn't matter, but know this: God created you on purpose, and you are unique, and His masterpiece would not be complete without you. He made you in His image. You are made in the same image as the God of the universe, and that's pretty awesome. And this week we're learning that asking questions helps us grow. We're reading out of Genesis chapter 32, which tells us about the story of Jacob wrestling with God. And while he's wrestling with God, he asks him a simple question. He says, "What is your name?" And you might be like, what's significant about that? He asked a question. He asked a question to God, which sometimes it feels like we can't ask questions to God or ask questions about God, but it's completely the opposite of the truth. We should always ask questions about God, about the Bible, about what things mean. And never accept the answer that, oh, we just don't ask that question here. If someone doesn't ask your question, ask someone else. Ask me. I would always be glad to answer your questions. And if I don't know the answer, we can find out together. And you might be wondering why this bag of cookies, I don't know if you've seen it yet, is hanging above my head. And it's a part of my illustration. See, asking questions helps us better understand tough topics or things that we want to know more about, but we just don't know yet. But how are you ever going to learn anything new if you don't ask questions? See, this bag of cookies is just out of my reach even when I jump. And it's kind of like some tough topics in the Bible, like salvation, baptism, prayer, different things in the Bible that confuse us. This is the reason why we need to ask questions. And see, we're in this series called Brix, where this is a big Lego brick. But each week we're going to discover how our brick in the entire masterpiece of God's creation makes a big difference. Our lives, our stories, and our choices make a big difference. See, this week, since we're learning about asking questions, imagine, if you will, every time I ask a question to someone about a topic, let's say that bag of cookies is the topic of prayer, and I don't know anything about it. I'm new to this whole Christianity thing. But every time I ask a question, I will get closer to understanding what prayer is all about. So I may ask the question, what is prayer? And I would say, prayer is a conversation with God. And I get to place a brick. And then I might ask, well, how do I talk to God? And I would answer, like you're talking to your best friend. You can go to him with anything. And then maybe I have the question, what if I've made a mistake? Well, When you pray, you can ask God for forgiveness, and He will forgive you. And then I might ask the question, what if I'm afraid to pray in front of others? And I would answer, that's okay. Sometimes we don't want to pray in front of other people, but when we pray out loud, it helps other people know what's important to us and what's on our hearts so that they can pray for it too. Then I may ask the question, what if my prayers don't sound big and beautiful and use amazing words like I hear some adults do? That is okay, because I don't know about you, but whenever I'm talking to my best friends, I don't address them as thou, holy, most awesome, bestest friend. I say, hey, what's up, man? I've missed you. I'm glad to see you. You can talk the same way to God. Or you may have the tough question that, does God really hear my prayers? Sometimes it feels like no one's listening. And I would answer you that in multiple places in Scripture, you can read in 1 John chapter 5 or 1 Peter chapter 3, where it says God listens to our prayers. He listens to the prayers of those that follow Him and love Him. And see, what happens is as you ask these questions, it's like adding a brick to get you closer to understanding the topic that you may not have known previously. And as you ask these questions and you grow in knowledge, brick by brick, you will get closer and closer to your goal of knowing more about God, about Jesus, about things like prayer and salvation and baptism and forgiveness. And the more you know about these things, the more you can tell others about these things. Guys, it's so important to ask questions. Jacob asked a question when he was wrestling with God. There's literally an entire book in the Bible called Habakkuk, which literally means to wrestle with God. That means to ask questions. Don't go through life and grow up without understanding these things. Some things may be really complicated. You may not understand them until you're older, but ask questions, get answers, because they will help solidify the foundation of your faith and make you stronger and make your faith stronger.
God's story. Jacob wrestles. So part of God's story is about the time a guy named Jacob wrestled with a stranger. And it begins like this. Jacob grew up with a big, tough, hairy twin brother named Esau. Because Esau was the firstborn, he was supposed to get a special blessing. But Jacob was tricky, and with the help of his mom, wound up getting the blessing for himself. This made Esau furious, so Jacob ran away. A few years later, God told Jacob to return home, where Esau still lived. But Jacob was a little worried. He had heard that Esau was headed toward him with 400 men. Either Esau had a lot of friends, or he was bringing an army. So Jacob sent messengers ahead with gifts. Hopefully, if Esau was still angry with him, the gifts would calm him down. While Jacob was traveling, he stopped by a river. Now, God hadn't asked Jacob to stop. He stopped because he was afraid. He sent his family and servants and everything he owned across the river. Then he waited, alone, crying out to God in frustration. Jacob knew God had promised to be with him, but he was terrified. Suddenly, a man came into the camp out of nowhere and began to wrestle Jacob. Jacob fought back, and this was a knockdown, drag-out title fight. All night, neither one of these fighters backed down. In fact, they wrestled for so long that the sun started to come up. When the stranger saw that Jacob wasn't going to give up, he touched Jacob's hip, and that simple touch pulled Jacob's hip out of socket, causing him to limp. Then the man said, "Let me go." But Jacob knew there was something special about this guy. So he said, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." The stranger stopped fighting and gave Jacob a new name. He said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob. From now on, you will be called Israel because you fought with God and with men and have won." See, the name Israel actually means God fights. Kids, that means that Jacob had been wrestling all night with God. Anyway, right after that, the stranger did bless Jacob. But the best part is, Jacob knew he had seen God face to face, and that changed him. Not only did Jacob get a new name, but he was no longer a fearful man, running away from his own brother. In fact, when the stranger left, Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming. This time, he ran to Esau, kissed him, and gave him gifts just because he loved him. Jacob realized that he could obey God no matter how scared he felt. He could trust that God would always keep his promises. And that's the story of Jacob wrestling with God. So, in case you missed it, here's the quick version. God told Jacob to go home. That meant seeing his brother Esau. Jacob made camp near a river alone. He was terrified. A stranger came and wrestled him. They fought until dawn. The stranger touched Jacob's hip. The wrestling match was over. Jacob asked for a blessing. He got a new name first. It was Israel. The stranger was God. Jacob went to meet Esau. He trusted God. And that's a part of God's story.
I really enjoyed those two videos, and I'm so serious. If you guys have questions at all, you can ask me in person. You can have your mom or your dad or your grandparents message me on Facebook or Instagram. If you have a question about God or the Bible or where I got my shirt from, it doesn't matter. Whatever questions you have, I would love to answer them. Because you asking questions helps grow your faith and helps grow your understanding of the Bible and who God is and how much He loves you. Yes, you. Right there. God loves you. And now's the part of the video where we ask you a few questions. Make sure you were paying attention. So if you need to, pause the video to have more time to read the questions as they'll pop up on the screen. Remember, answer them out loud because your neighbor may not know the answer or may not know something about you that you can share by answering the question. So here they go. Question 1. Question 2. And last, and certainly not least, question number 3. I hope you answered all those questions out loud and participated. And now is the part of the video where we do our memory verse. And this will be our memory verse for the next 5 or 6 weeks. So it'll pop up every single week. And remember this verse because it's what our series is all about. It's the one thing that if you remember one thing from this entire series over the next 5 or 6 weeks, make it this memory verse because it'll teach you what we need to know. So our memory verse is 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12. And it says this: "Now we see these things imperfectly, like puzzling reflections in a mirror. But then we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know now is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God now knows me completely." And see, that verse says that we can ask as many questions as we want, and there are answers for a lot of things. And the most important answer that we need to hear is that Jesus died for you. He died for me. He died for everyone on our behalf because we are imperfect. We sin, we make mistakes, and we need forgiveness. And Jesus gave it to us on the cross. But He didn't stay dead. He rose again, thus showing everyone that He has power over death, and we can have that same power if we believe in Him and follow Him. That's the one answer that matters. But there's a lot of other questions we can ask and get answers to, but there are some things in life that we won't know until we go to live with Jesus in heaven forever. Some things we don't understand, and that's okay. We don't have to know everything, but knowing the most important thing of where your salvation and where your life lies is by far the most important answer that you need to know. So remember 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12. It's a long one, but it's worth remembering. And that's all we have for you this week at Kidzrock. Go out and ask some questions. Ask me some questions. Ask your parents some questions. And if they don't know the answer, or they just don't feel like answering you because you asked them why 1,000 times, they can tell you to ask me all of your ridiculous questions. Good, bad, silly, ridiculous, doesn't matter. I would love to answer them. And we all love you at Kidzrock, and we hope you have a fantastic week. Bye, guys.